Okay, let's jump into it. So I had the FOMC this morning, obviously. That was 6 o'clock local time, so in Melbourne. What are we at now? Just quarter past 11 here. Excuse me. No real sort of shocker that it came in at 5.5%. So basically, they held it. There was never a chance that they were going to cut. Like, I wasn't even part of the conversation, and obviously they're done with the hiking. So there's no real shock with it coming in at 5.5. There was a statement that did come out with it. There was leaning a little bit more on the sort of hawkish side of things, and I'll get to the charts in a second, but straight off the bat, we saw a little bit of a drop down on sort of risk, basically. Aussie dropped off, gold dropped off a little bit after it had sort of been running up a little bit prior. So certainly the recovery on Aussie from its CPI data yesterday was basically it shrugged it right off and went right back up and tested the top side of its sort of range that it's been in for the last 2 weeks. But the press conference is really the one that you wanted to watch, and you wanted to. It almost sort of seemed that it wasn't even the press conference that really got things to do the move that they did, like because we didn't get the major breakout. And again, I'll get to the chart in a sec, but through the actual press conference, typical sort of back and forth, a little bit down, but it actually sort of ran up a little bit. So risk was pushing up, Aussie was pushing up towards the top of its range. Gold had a bit of a decent recovery. I think tested 2050 again. And then sort of like it was through the conversation with the sort of question time that again it wasn't really doing much. And then there was one question. It's funny because I was speaking to a mate at the same time as it was we were sort of watching this thing, and I was saying it's almost like they're waiting for that one golden question to sort of make things move. And then it sort of came by God knows who it was, some bald guy and that, and he was like, "Oh, look," pretty much bluntly said to Powell, "Look, are we still going to be raising rates?" I can't remember the exact wordings, but basically what he was saying is, are we going to be cutting rates in March, or do you think we're going to put back? And Powell sort of danced around it a little bit, but pretty much sort of came to the point of saying, look, it's pretty unlikely that we are going to see a sort of a cutting of rates in March, which is what the market had been sort of trumpeting for a while. But I think even in the last sort of couple of weeks or so, I think that realistically the expectation has been waning somewhat, and I think it's been sort of dropping off, and people are realizing that they're doing okay, but you're not doing at the point like they're still getting strong data out, and you're going to cut the rates and that to sort of stimulate the economy to avoid the recession kind of thing. They're not really at that point yet, and inflation's still above 3%. So, it doesn't really have enough things lining up to sort of say, yes, okay, we are going to do it. So, anyway, to the chart. So we can see the reaction here through this period. So where were we? 6 o'clock. This was, excuse me. So this was the press conference, shot up. As I said, sort of like, straight off the bat, they had that little statement out and that sort of sounded a bit more hawkish, pushed the market up. But generally, coming in at 5.5%, it was expected. So you didn't really sort of think too much. Let's get down a little bit lower. So this is on the 15 minute here. And then sort of, as I said, press conference finished. So probably it was only went for about 15 minutes or so. So press conference probably finished down around this time over here. But then we went into the questions, and as I said, there was that question where the guy said, "Look, are you going to still cut in March?" And they said no, and that's when we saw things sort of really start to sort of move up towards the top side over here, and obviously peter off a little bit, come into close. So the sort of takeaway for me at the moment is that as if you've been watching what I've been sort of doing the last sort of week or so, um, I've said these are the levels you want to break. This top side over here, bottom side over here. We do have a small, like an actual sort of more true range in the middle here, where we know the buyers are sitting. And as you can see, this was respected again last night, and then sort of shot all the way to the top side, and it was respected with the sells again for the top side. So realistically, we didn't get anything, like no actual sort of movement. So this is a little consolidation box, but we're still in this. It's just a sideways hustle. So still, I'm looking for a break of those two levels. So I think the fact that sort of like obviously, okay, we're not cutting now, fine. Market knows that. It's not off the cards, but it's pushed back to, I think I read something where I think they were saying possibly May. Okay, so it's not off the card, so it's not like okay, let's scream higher based on that. But at the same time, it's not coming in March, so we're not breaking straight down. And this is why we had this very sort of flying around up and down kind of move. Typical sort of stuff. Okay, we need more data. It'll all be data dependent. Okay, great. 1,000 times we've sort of heard this stuff before. So, there's nothing really to take away from that, but, it's still in this range. So we'll see sort of how things sort of happen when they come online in a few minutes, 40 minutes or so, and see what the market sort of likes to think about it. But certainly it was coming up pretty strong with that. And we saw, Aussie took a pretty hard hit, sort of closed, actually took out the lows from the CPI. Gold actually held okay, came back down as I mentioned yesterday. I think said sort of 2030 was the area for the supports there, and it certainly came down, tested it. So that held as well. So as I said, till we see a break and a hold outside these two zones here, we're not really sort of any more in the know than we were sort of previously. As I said, we're still sort of just flying around this thing. If we get a push out early and it comes up the top side here, well, there's your answer. Otherwise, I imagine just more choppiness through here until NFP. So I think we're fairly light on the news today in terms of USD news, I should say. So yeah, as you can see, there's not really much coming out. We got BOE tonight, so this will be a sort of a factor in moving things potentially. Again, I don't think they're going to be moving anywhere with their rates, so we'll wait to see what they say. And then we've got unemployment claims. That could be a move up this morning or sort of later tonight, tomorrow morning kind of thing. And then, of course, we've got ISM. Okay, so we've got a little bit of data still to come. I knew we definitely still had the unemployment claims, but the NFP. But yeah, ISM tonight, unemployment claims, BOA, they're going to be the ones that have the potential to sort of knock it out of this range. But for now, it's just a little bit more sort of sideways grind hustle. So yeah, it's not really a great deal to report on this. Obviously, as you can see, we've got the tiny little ranges and zones inside here where you could expect little sort of buys. If you are looking to move back down to the bottom side, I think that's your kind of little range that you'd like to sort of see it break down the bottom side of to sort of come down here. But again, it's just have to, as boring as it is, it's a bit of wait and see. So to see what they do as they sort of open it up and then sort of react to that. Yesterday we saw this sort of push up here with no real reason for it, and it just drove up through Asia and just hung around the top side here before just getting absolutely clobbered. And this is sort of, as I said, sort of coming into the FOMC or sort of like late Europe session, start of US session. You can see sort of starting to build back up a little bit here, but yeah, it's more or less it's just a pendulum. It's swinging back and forth. All right, so flip on to gold because gold hit our targets up here, as you can see. This little top zone here, and this is what I was saying the other day. Once we go through 40, obviously we had this big smack back down here. So a couple of takeaways with gold at the moment. Yesterday I was saying that this move here, this thing here, was very reminiscent of this move here. We had a big drive up, smacked straight on the nose, down, bear engulfing, and then ground up all the way through. Exactly the same price action here from whenever it was, Wednesday night. Wednesday night, Tuesday, whenever it was. And obviously we had a little bit of a grind through Asia yesterday as we had that sort of push up with DXY for no apparent reason. And as you can see there, we obviously drove through, and bang, got up to here. So I actually got my last gold off at, I think it was 55. So thereabouts, so really right up in the top end here. Because this area, as I said, and this is the whole point of marking these things out prior, is a known sell area. And this is what I was thinking, that sort of and I've said this ever since we had that drop down, that, I was looking for the topside move. 40 was the catalyst, and then 40, above 40, we were going to come up here and take out this top move here. I mean, we've got it measured out. We've got the arrow going there. We can see that the buyers were here, sellers were here previously. It only stood to reason that they'd be here again. And the fact that it smacked and came back down like this, obviously that was in line with sort of the FOMC comments, means that even if we do get back up here again, I'd imagine we're still going to have to deal with a little bit of headwind along this area here. As for sort of where it came down, as I said, look, it's come right down to these lower support areas here, which we can see this is where sellers were, sellers were, sellers were, sellers were, and once we got past it, we have buyers, we have buyers, we have buyers. And it's pushed it back up here. So I think honestly, after last night's or this morning's action, I'd expect probably a little bit of a little bit of time for the market to digest the movements of overnight. So I mean, I don't expect much from gold in Asia session anyway, but certainly at the moment, I think that we're going to see a little bit of as I said, sideways hustle with the DXY, and I think sort of gold's going to just putter along as well. Getting above 40 again, or sitting on 40, getting above this sort of upper range over here is 42 area. This isn't really a range, like an area. This is more just like, as I said, a point of interest, because this is obviously where we saw it react previously, but it's not like one of these ones. These are where we've seen the sellers actually come into action. This red area through here, this 40. We've seen the sellers come into action time and time and time again and try and defend this. Now the fact that even though we got smacked down, we managed to close above it. So that's saying that the buyers are here and they're happy to to try and hold this zone, defend this zone, because again, supports and resistance are the kind of the same thing. And once you go through it and you can close above it, there's a lot of the market that go, okay, well, I'm happy to sort of see what happens here. If we sort of get a big push back up, you're looking at 49 as a as an area for the body fills, and then obviously taking out the wick at 55. So it just sort of means that all of a sudden now, instead of dealing with this sort of 40 to 20 area along here, we can really look for slightly tighter range, but we can look for gains between between 40 and 55. And then you can say, okay, are they going to break above 55? Or you can say, are they going to fail to hold 40? And then sort of come back down here. I mean, it could. I mean, it's got no bottom wick here. It could just go bang and come down here. Certainly could come down here, fill this wick to the bottom side. But I think sort of the crucial thing for me is to sort of see where this next candle, because obviously this is an engulfing candle, see where this next candle finishes and closes and see what they can do with it. Because as you can see, same with this candle here, came down here, managed to close back up inside above this area where we know that these are sellers, 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 sellers. Despite this being a big sell down, it managed to close up into this range, and as you can see, it moved forward, and the buyers are happy to sort of follow on with that. So we'll sort of see how that sort of plays on. But certainly gold looking a little bit better here. This is just, again, it's a known area where you expected it to sort of sell down from. You can see, I had a mate ask me the other day, sort of just about sort of targets and all this kind of thing. Wick fills are good, but body fills are always, I find, a great place. And as you can see, this is on the daily, that's where your body fill is. Like from this drop down here, to undo this move, I call it undone once the body is filled on these candles. You don't have to fill these wicks. This is just overshoot in my opinion, but this is the body fill. It came down, came up here, closed it, bang, and that's why I closed my last. Like I closed a few in the 40s as well. Don't get me wrong, I didn't close the whole lot because I don't close everything and open everything all at once. I'll scale in, scale out. But the last one I got off, I think it was 55 or thereabouts. Let me check it. So here are a couple of them. Oh, so that's one from 32 to 52 here. I've got 3 accounts, so it takes me a while to sort of flip between these sort of things to find the levels that I sort of take with them all. But and if we go new screenshot on this one, bang, and that's the last one I got off 32, 55, 55. So if you look at this 55, 55, this is like, Obviously, I don't trade through this platform. This is OANDA. I trade through IG. Ooh, there's 55.55. Pretty much exactly right in line with where our zone was drawn up and the body fills with it all. So yeah, as I said, look, anyway, this is just part of my plan and just sort of showing that I am actually trading these things as well. I'm not just sort of harping on about them. But okay, so where to with gold? This is on the daily. We are sort of grinding. We're obviously finding some pretty heavy sell downs here. As I just mentioned, look, this hasn't got a bottom wick, so we could see a little bit of a push down to the bottom side here. 36 would be a reasonable area. You've got a little bit of this rising support. This would be a body fill of the previous day, so that's a reasonable point of where you could be looking for it to sort of come up to. But certainly, I think if we can have a sort of strongish day, like a bit of a sort of a drift on DXY, then I think we could sort of certainly start to look around this kind of area for our battleground, at least in the next couple of periods, and get almost sort of like a bit of a cup and handle, and this could be the handle through here. It doesn't mean that sort of like this area couldn't come down to this, and this could be what we're looking through, but I certainly think at the moment I wouldn't be too quick, despite the size of these wicks, which are obviously quite large. Um, this week coming through here, we had a previous week there. We are still grinding up through them. We haven't seen the daily close and sort of come down here, despite that sort of move up on DXY. So I'd say, there's still a little bit more sort of upside probing to be done before this were to sort of roll over. The RSI supports a bit more of a move. We are grinding, grinding, grinding. All you need is a big solid close day, and then we'll sort of see things sort of continue on a little bit more. Okay, flip across to Aussie. We do have some data out in a moment with the Aussie. As you can see, it's still struggling with it all. It's trying to fight its way back through here. But this is what I always sort of say. Look, this is where we know the buyers are. This is where we know the buyers are. And we did sort of come right down, and this is another example of what I just said before. If you look at this, there's your body fill. Whoop. That's the body fill of this move down here. You're not looking to fill the wicks necessarily. Look, not to say that it's done. It can still obviously melt down further. But body fill, that's where you look for it to come. Body fill down here, same line. So that's definitely something to look for if you're looking for your targets or putting your sort of your price targets in where you want to sort of take some profit. Okay, so we got a bit of Aussie data coming out just now. Where we at? All right, so we got building improvers. Wow, that got smacked. Expecting a little bit of a slowdown here. Obviously, sort of right down. Imports quarter on quarter, up a tick. Business confidence way down, and it's sort of Japan. So they're sort of manufacturing PMI in line with expectations. All right, so a little bit of I guess you could say a bit of a mix, but realistically, I'd say that's negative for Aussie, that's negative for Aussie, that's positive for Aussie. The reaction is these are low tier bits of news, so it's nothing too substantial, and the reaction, if we jump right down onto a low time frame, is about as expected. It's low tier news. We are starting to actually move up into this area over here. But yeah, it's nothing drastic. I mean, you've pulled back 1 point or so far. I mean, it's only, early days, so we could sort of see this completely come back down over here. But particularly with the low tier, like all Aussie news, but as well sort of the low tier, particularly levels of news, they just don't care. It's about what's happening with the US dollar. We are really just a tail end. As I said yesterday, it's it'll just either add to whatever the movement is if we have strong Aussie data and US dollar is selling off at the same time, or if it's a little bit of a counter thing, then we'll just see it undo it. And you saw this yesterday because that CPI, where were we? Through this period here, this was CPI yesterday. It obviously took a beating, as it should have, with such a, you can't see me doing the finger things, but inverted commas of sort of like joke. Oh, so I suppose that's not where you'd be putting it for the joke, but those figures, the data, it came back down, but look at the recovery. And this is before CPI. This is CPI through here. CPI, FOMC. That's where the data dropped, came back down through the press conference, started to come rip back up. That's where the guy asked, okay, the rate's going to be happening. No, they're not going to be happening in March, or a very low chance. Bang, comes down here. So you know what I mean. Like the fact that you could recover off such a low CPI print through that period goes to show that it doesn't really matter. Like obviously it does with Aussie, it does with all currencies, but end of the day, if they want to sell the US dollar, they're going to sell it against everything. Even with our bad data, it can pick us up, and they can work the other way as well. If we have strong data and they want to buy US dollar, we still just see the moves undo quite quickly. So yes, anyway, it's holding this lower sort of high time frame support area. We are seeing it as well. This is an interesting sort of thing that this, if you zoom this out a little bit here, put on a 4 hour, might show it a little bit better. This is our falling resistance, like our little sort of channel. You can see it respected down here, up the top over here, here, and obviously we came through the side, out the side here. It didn't come out the side and go bang, now I've broken out and I'm firing up. It tried to, got smacked on the nose, tried to, got smacked on the nose. As I said, it's about what's happening with the US dollar. The US dollar's grinding, we're grinding. Doesn't even matter that if we're trying to sort of have something that can support it to move up, even though we've had quite weak data. And that goes as well to show that we've had weak data. The retail sales were shocking, CPI was shocking, and we haven't broken down. Why? Because US dollar, DXY, even though Aussie isn't part of the DXY, US dollar as a whole is just grinding sideways. So it's holding it, it's trying to do a little bit of recovery, hold this sort of range for now. Realistically, it's just the same story. You're just waiting for a break, one side or the other, whether we're going to come out the bottom, whether we're going to come out the top. But back to what I was saying, we've got this sort of channel coming through here. It didn't fire out, but look at how well it's respecting it on the other side of it now. It broke through. So how do I? It broke through here, and then respected it here, respected it here, respected it here. So, that's certainly something to take away from it all, because they're not sort of just, going, okay, this is a failed breakout. Generally, if you have a breakout and it fails, comes back down here, you could expect this to go bang and really sort of push and hammer down the bottom side over here. But they're still finding buys. So the range is still in play. Top side of the falling resistance, now sort of falling support, is also coming into play. So I'd expect, as I said, a little bit more of a grind through here, maybe a move back up. You could look body fillers at 95 for the 4 hour on the Aussie here. And we could really still expect to just sort of play in this zone over here for now. We'll flip across copper. Copper's just been charting beautifully. If you've been following me on like this stuff, the copper trade has just been absolute. Look at this. And things that sort of just respect the chart, I just love. Like structurally, it's perfect. I mean, you can see, as I said, I've called these things as they're happening. We had that sort of hard sell down here, which admittedly, I got clipped on a couple of times because I thought this was going to come back up and just fire back in here. It didn't. It kept on dragging down here. So, but we had this gradient here. We had a sort of slightly less side of the gradient here with what was a negative divergence at the time. We saw the breakout. Where we at? This negative divergence down here. We saw the breakout, the retest of the breakout level, and then bang, subsequent higher high, and away it went. It also, once it sort of came through this zone, we said, look, it's going to come back here. This is an area we've seen it respected previously. It's been on the sell side, it's been on the buy side. We're through it now. Here's your back test and your breakaway. If we get back down onto the 4 hour, you can see that where it's been sort of playing now, it broke through, hit price target, came back, retested this previous high over here. This is on the 4 hour we've got now. And you can see that, they were holding it here. They were holding it here with the sellers. Now they're holding it with the buyers. Now they're holding it with the buyers. So what we've got to look for with this now is, okay, we knew that this was going to sell down here. Like if you watch the videos the last couple of days, this is pretty much exactly what I said. We've got the underside of this previous rising support. It broke through. It came up in the top side over here. So the one thing, but a couple of things I'm looking for with copper. So short term, we can see that obviously the buyers are sitting in this area here. So you want to stay above, 3906 area. We knew it sold down from a technical level. It was also this horizontal. We know that the sellers are sitting in the horizontal here as well. And that's sort of like, you know what I mean, people are gonna take a little bit of risk off the table, and also this is coming around the same time that we had the stuff happening with the US dollar. But so, bear with one sec. The interesting thing with copper here is this. This is the weekly. So weekly, obviously, it's back off the highs a little bit here. If we can revisit the highs, if we can sort of close up around this 395 plus level, this is going to give us a 10-month high close, which I've said a couple of times. That's going to be the catalyst, and it's going to bring it on the radars of people to go, okay, bang, this is a viable target moving forward. Yes, we got the wick fill, which could sort of could provide some sort of resistance on the way up, but realistically, it's just a point of interest. It's not sort of like, okay, the whole market. This is the kind of thing you're looking for, where the market said repeatedly, time and time and time and time and time again, they're doing that. What this was here was a breakout effort. As you can see, this is sort of like, you know, the large falling resistance. This spike here was them attempting to break out, maybe hitting some stops that were above these areas, the horizontals. It went up here, took out all the stops, and they did it, and then they ran it down further. So this is what they like to do. They shoot it up, take out anybody that's got their technical stops in, and then on with the show. Keep moving back down. So yeah, it's a point of reference, but it's not really like a sort of major area. This top end over here, this is your price target. When this horizontal area across the top here would come in line with a bit of a channel move here as well. So I think certainly want to sort of see how this closes. We've got 2 days left, obviously, over the week. We've got a new month starting now as well. So yeah, I think there's still some upside with copper to come, particularly if it can get this close up here. If it fails to sort of close above this area, then I think we could be potentially looking for a little bit more of a drift sideways. What I wouldn't be too positive about with that is that I like this as a bit of a channel, but I want to see the channel continue. If we only go to here and then drift sideways, that to me is a incomplete of the channel move, obviously, because the channel needs to touch top, bottom, needs to touch top next before it sees some sort of sell down. If it just goes and dribbles here, then I'd say that this could be potentially putting it in risk of sort of breaking this channel and then coming to the bottom side down here. So yeah, so for me, it's crucial to sort of see that where copper closes, and above 395 is what I'm looking for a weekly close. And finally with China, China's still, it's holding on. That's on the weekly. Let's put it on something a little bit more for us. As you can see, this is the area that we sort of called, this sort of red zone here. It was going to come up, bang, sold down, and it held. At one stage of this, prior to FOMC last night, it did get that break, and it came down here. It was a nice big long candle. Obviously, US dollar buying, boom, came, brought it back up into the sort of area. But as you can see, like it is somewhat sort of coming down here. It's not great in terms of chart at the moment, obviously, like this short-term thing. But you could say, we don't want horizontal. Get rid of that. Yeah. So you can see that this is somewhat coming down here. I'd be fairly happy to call that a bit of a chart. Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a chart, bit of a channel. Couple of things. One, yeah, okay, I'll call this a bit of a channel. Yes, you got the wicks outside, but it's managed to close back inside each time, and on it goes. But the horizontal is the one here that we've been looking for. This for the short term, medium term kind of move with it all. And this is what we want to see a close underneath. Didn't manage to get the close underneath. Obviously, sort of like these are wick areas, but you want a strong close underneath, and as such, fired back up. So I think if we can take out these wicks to the bottom here, that'll be the confirmation now. But as it is now, we're obviously just grinding. We're underneath this sort of higher time frame sort of resistance zone. Topside moves, you want to see it go above 7197. But again, if you can see all my little things, I am looking for more downside moves, potentially to sort of come back out and swing out the bottom side of this major range that it had been sort of playing in. But yeah, I don't think we've got much sort of China data coming. There was a bit of PMI data for China yesterday, which was more or less just in line with what was happening. So it wasn't anything too spectacular. but it wasn't anything shocking. So, sort of saw the market fairly neutral about it all. And again, it's really just sort of going, same with the Aussie. It's been mainly driven by sort of what's happening with the US dollar on a broad sense. Of course, the PBOC have got a lot more sway and weight to throw around than the RBA, but they're probably equally as stupid. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that's about it from me. All right, let's go.